16 chapters in on our Bible binge. We're in, this is August 1st, so Job 13 through 15. I don't know about you, but as I've been going through the Bible binge and reading through Job, I kind of get caught up, caught up in the story or what people are saying, and I'm moving along a little bit quicker than necessarily the bookmark has it, kind of looking at the response to one another as Job has these conversations, but at the same time, kind of these prayers that he's still communicating to God in the midst of his anguish, in the midst of his hardship, in the midst of his struggles. Really some beautiful words that come back and forth as his friends really try to figure out why this is happening to Job. And their conclusion they're coming up with is basically a conclusion that Job has sinned. Job has done something wrong, and that is why this is happening to him. The reason his sons and daughters died is they did something wrong. They sinned against God, and that's why that's happening. And yet Job continues to reply, show me. Where is it? Where is my sin? And he realizes that that's not what's going on here, that God is doing something else here. And even in the midst of it, he cries out with some anguish and some turmoil and some really some dark sayings, especially in chapter 3. But even later on, he says things like this in Job 10, verse 19, I wish I never existed, but had been carried from the womb to the grave. I'm disgusted with my life. And what I hope you see sometimes, maybe you've felt those emotions or felt that darkness sometimes in your life where, it just seems like everything's wrong, everything's broken, everything hurts. Job doesn't want to kill himself. Don't hear him say that, but he does wish he was dead. So he's not taking his own life. He wishes God would take his life from him. And we know, though, that's not going to happen. That was a limit that was put against Satan by God for Job. And there's some funny sayings here too. Like I was just looking at some of the things I've highlighted from this week so far. In chapter 13, I prefer to speak to the Almighty and argue my case before you. You use lies like plaster. You are worthless healers. If you would only shut up and let that be your wisdom. If you would only shut up and let that be your wisdom. Job 13, verse 5. I think that could be a good social media verse to cling to, life verse. Let that be your wisdom, not saying anything. In fact, that would have been helpful for Job's friends, wasn't it? As the story begins, they actually are really helpful in the beginning because the first 7 days, they join Job in his pity and his misery, and they just sit with him in sackcloth and ashes. They don't try to explain away. They don't try to use platitudes of, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be okay, or one day time will heal all wounds. I mean, those aren't, we just say those things because we don't know what to say when we shouldn't say anything at all. And so, it's just an interesting thing that happens in the midst of this, in Job's whole comments here and how he goes through this. I will hope. And I love this statement, chapter 13, verse 15, even if he kills me, I will hope in him. I will still defend my ways before him. Even if he kills me, I will hope in him. That's the kind of faith that we want, not based on the circumstances, but based on who God is and who we are. That hope that we have of resurrection, hope, and promise. There's just, I really have been appreciated. I've read Job before in Bible readings, but I don't think I've ever read Job deeply like we are here. And I'm really appreciating it more than I've ever kind of thought before. And so I hope you're appreciating it too. I wanted to share one more video too with you that goes a little bit more about Job and wisdom literature and understanding it in light of some of the other wisdom literature. And so this is from the Bible Project again, but this is not like the overview. We shared that video. You can go back and see that in our social and our videos and the like. But this one's more giving you an idea, kind of painting it in the light of other wisdom literature and what's all going on here. So it's a little bit different, but I thought it may be helpful for you as you journey through the book of Job. Let's watch.
There are 3 books in the Bible known as the wisdom literature: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. The first, Proverbs, showed us that God is wise and just.
Yeah, we learned that God has ordered the world so that it's fair. The righteous are rewarded, the wicked are punished. In other words, you get what you deserve.
But then we meet Ecclesiastes, who observes, people don't always get what they deserve.
He said the world isn't always fair, that life is unpredictable and hard to comprehend, just like smoke.
And this makes you wonder, okay, well, is God wise and just?
Exactly. And so it's that question that is being explored in the final book of wisdom, Job.
All right, let's dive in.
So Job begins with a strange story that takes place up in the heavens, which are described something like a heavenly command center. So God is there with these angelic creatures called the sons of God, and they're all there reporting for duty.
And God points out this guy Job, his servant, showing how righteous and good he is.
And then one of these angelic creatures approaches. He's referred to in Hebrew as the Satan.
The Satan. Who is this?
Well, this word is actually a title, which literally means the one who is opposed. So out of this whole crew, he is the one questioning how God is running the world. And he proposes that Job might not actually love God, that he's only a good person because God rewards him. If God were to take away all of the good things he gave to Job, then we would see his true colors.
So he thinks Job is just working the system?
That's exactly right. Maybe he's obeying just to get what he wants.
So God agrees to this experiment and allows the Satan to inflict suffering on Job.
And Job loses everyone and everything that he cares about. It is devastating. And remember, he deserves none of this. God himself said so.
The remarkable thing is that in the midst of all this suffering, Job still praises God.
At least for chapters 1 and 2. But then in chapter 3, we find out how he's really feeling inside. He unleashes this poem that reveals this devastation. It's a long, elaborate curse on the day that he was born.
After this, some of Job's friends come to visit him to offer their help. And all of them are like, Job, you must have done something horribly wrong to deserve this. After all, we know God is just, and we know the world is ordered by God's justice and fairness, so you must be getting what you deserve.
And for the next 34 chapters, the friends and Job go back and forth in very dense Hebrew poetry. His friends keep speculating about why God might have sent such suffering, and they even start making up lists of hypothetical sins that Job must have committed. But after each accusation, Job defends his innocence.
And Job is innocent.
He is. He's also on an emotional roller coaster. At some moments, he's very confident that God is still wise and just.
Yeah, in other moments, he's doubting God's goodness.
He even comes to accuse God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. So by the end of the dialogue, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person, and God does so. He comes in the form of a great storm cloud.
Now, God doesn't give Job a direct answer. He doesn't tell Job about the conversation with the Satan.
Yeah, he does something very different. He takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe. He shows Job how grand the world is, and he asks him if he's even capable of running it or understanding it, just for a day. He shows Job how much detail there is in the world, things that we might see every day, but really don't understand at all. But God does. He knows it all intimately. He pays attention to the beauty and operations of the universe in ways that we haven't even imagined and in places that we will never see.
Then to conclude, God shows Job two wondrous beasts and brags about how great they are.
Yeah, they are dangerous. I mean, they would kill you without even thinking about it. And God says they're not evil. They're actually a part of his good world.
And then that's it. That's God's whole defense. It's kind of weird. I mean, what was this all about?
It seems to be this. From Job's point of view, it looks like God is not just. But God's perspective is infinitely bigger. He's dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexity when he makes decisions. And this is what God calls his wisdom.
So Job asking God to defend himself is actually kind of absurd.
He couldn't comprehend this kind of complexity even if he wanted to.
So where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord.
But that's not where the book ends, because after this, God restores to Job double everything he had lost. And this, again, is surprising. I mean, is this a reward? Is God saying, congratulations, Job, you passed this elaborate test?
No, I mean, the whole book just made the point that Job losing everything was not a punishment, and so now getting it back isn't a reward.
So why does he get it back?
Well, apparently, God, in his wisdom, decided to give Job a gift. We don't know why. But what we do know is that Job is now the kind of person who, no matter what comes, good or bad, he can trust God's wisdom.
And that's the book of Job, and the end of our wisdom series.
These biblical books of wisdom are amazing. Each one offers a unique perspective on the good life, and you need to hear all of them together as you learn to live with wisdom and in the fear of the Lord.
So you can kind of see why we're going to go to some of the other wisdom literature, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. We're not going to spend time in Proverbs yet. We'll get there a little bit later. But balancing that tension in our relationship with God, think about our Christian faith, especially as a Lutheran Christian understanding of that faith. There's always this tension. There's law and gospel. There's sinner and saint. There's justice and mercy. And so these tensions that we live in are a good thing. Are a good thing. And so. Trying to resolve them at times isn't always helpful. We might like to resolve all tensions, but we just won't. And wisdom literature helps us to see that. And the book of Job helps us to see that too. We don't get a reason for why Job's going through all this. God asked Job, as we'll talk about it this weekend a little bit more in our message, 70 questions that God asks of Job, to which none of them Job can give an answer to. And at the end of the time, you're waiting, like, you're left with the thought, well, if I can't answer all these questions, then the question of my suffering, the question of what I'm going through, it won't make sense either. I can't understand it. I can't understand the mind of God and how he works and what he's up to and what he's doing. And that's kind of the whole point that we get to the back of Job. And in the midst of it all, Job shows us some healthy things too, that we can still ask the questions. Ask away. Be in the presence of the Lord God. Bring him before him. But just don't make the dependence of that answer on the basis of your faith. As Job never shows that. Job never says that. I'm not going to believe if God doesn't tell me. No. He keeps God on his throne as El Shaddai, the God Almighty, no matter what. He doesn't understand. He's frustrated. He's sad. He's hurting. Absolutely. And he brings those to God. So my prayer is that you're able to do that too. Bring that stuff to God. Don't let those emotions, however you judge them to be, you don't need to be judgmental on them. Just bring them to God. Have that relationship with him. He wants to hear from you. And don't be surprised if he answers in a way that you might not understand, in a way that's just so much beyond our figuring out and our human minds and our human reason can comprehend. So we trust ourselves into the mercy of the one who came in real flesh and blood and gave himself for us. We know what this God feels for us and does for us in the person and the work of Jesus. So my prayer is you journey through Job and get through the rest of it, where we're going to have time this week and next week. So it kind of moves really quick when you're reading it. At least that's what I'm finding. So it's kind of maybe like a little bit of a break book here in the midst of the summer, and maybe one that we can identify with in the midst of our own suffering. God's